Hello, my name is Daniel Spence and I run Automation X, which is an automation agency that builds really cool automations and lead generation. So instead of me showing you how to build just one automation from scratch, I'm going to show you how to put all of the elements together and roughly what they do and how they work. So then you can build any automation. So I think that'll be the best way for you to kind of develop this as a skill, and then I'm not being funny, it's a lot of practicing and just kind of getting through there. I will also do some error handling and kind of like what to do if stuff doesn't work, because it's literally the case of like, these are the 4 steps that I do in order to be like, okay, why the hell is this not working? So yeah, we'll go from there. So we'll start with text phases. So in fact, you know what, we'll start even more basic than that. The whole entire premise of this is basically all of these are API calls, and let me show you what an API call looks like. Share this with a friend or someone you think is going to help. So an API call is basically, in fact that's a lovely way of showing it, it's basically how you pass the data back and forth from one place to another, and instead of you having to learn all of the code and everything like that, this is just the case of basically it passes the data across, which is really easy to use and kind of simple to get through. So each one of these is basically an API call. Now let me show you how to connect. Just set one of these up, which is really the fundamental basics of all of it. So the first one, you normally want something that's going to trigger it. So that's given away by, they've got a little purple box next to it. You can have it just like copy a sheet, but then it relies on the timer here, so then it runs every 15 minutes, whereas, just delete this, if you do a watch one, that's a good one, it will only do something once there's new rows added. You can still technically like change this to like regular intervals, but you can actually have it run on demand, so it will only change once there's new stuff added into the sheet. How you actually connect that to your Google Sheet, all of mine are like already connected on here, but if you go to add, it's literally just the case that you'd sign in with Google. It's that simple to link up, and then you just kind of pick which spreadsheet you want, pick what rows and tables and stuff you've got in it. It's really that simple. Same for email, like you can send an email, create a draft, whatever, but basically you're just going through and being like, okay, what would I piece these together in a way that kind of you can use it. So you might want to send an email once a new row's been added to a spreadsheet. I don't know why you'd want to do that. Same premise, there's loads of these on here. It does get slightly more complicated. So they've got email, which allows you to do different connection types. So you could technically plug this into literally whatever email you want, but they do also do, there's a Gmail one, which links directly into Gmail. There we go. Outlook, that's why I can find it. So then you can just do exactly the same thing on there. So there's multiple ways for a different one. So if like ever, just reply to the message for now. If there's ever one that's playing up, like just think about using the alternative. But yeah, then it's literally just a case once again of logging it, just signing in, and literally it's super straightforward to do, especially for stuff like this. Where it gets more complicated is where you're using kind of like some of their pre-built features. So text phases, this is basically a case of you're able to kind of more do stuff that comes from code and things like that. So you can get HTMLs, MLs out of tables and stuff like that, and kind of like play around with different data formats and how the data gets dumped in and stuff like that. So it's slightly more complicated on here. I'm just trying to think of one that's really quite useful. Hit the follow button, you don't want to miss what's next. So one that we use a lot is match patterns. So this can be a case where you put rejects and pattern finders and stuff like that. The real trick is to just go to ChatGPT and say, this is for the date. So I need a date in a certain format. I need it to go 4 numbers, so that's going to be a year, and then month, day, or however you want to do it. And then you simply just plug the text in from here. So let's say we're going to use a message ID that always has the date in. We need the date formatting in this way in order to book an event or whatever. Lots of these things, like it literally says underneath what they do. I'm not going to go through and read every single one of them, or this will be a 12-hour video. But like, do you want it to be a global match? So if it finds it on the first one, do you want it to carry on looking? Well, yeah, please. Is it going to be multiple lines of data and it just needs to find the one? Yeah. Is it going to be a single line? No, obviously. A bit counterintuitive if you click yes on there. And so on. So you can kind of go through and add things like that. Other ones that are useful within text phases are... The advanced version is just slightly more complicated, but replace. So if you want to find, like, if you're doing this with people's private data and you want to swap their name out for something else, you can quite easily do that. God, there's so many use cases for replacing stuff. Matching an element might be a case that you just find something that matches in a predefined string of text. So you're looking for, is the word yes sent in an email? And then you can literally go through and find, like, okay, is the word yes in this email? And it will search for an element, a match element, and find the yes bit, and then simply like pass it through or reject it. So you can almost use it like a filter. I think that's everything on there that we need to cover. So if I go to tools next, this is another one that we use all the time. To be honest with you, sleep is normally the one that I'm using out of here. The rest I don't really particularly use. So get multiple variables. Sometimes you can get strings of data. So let's say the sheet one just here. So let's say if you're watching for new rows and all of a sudden there's 20,000 rows added, and you want a breakdown of all of the different elements in all of the different rows. Occasionally, depending on how that data comes through, you can pass it through something like this, where it splits the data up. Like, so for example, all three of these, obviously depending on whether it's text, table or numbers, help kind of split the data up a bit more so that then you can use it in different functions. It's called aggregators. We'll come on to those in a bit more detail later on, but just to give you a bit of an idea. This one can, like, you can get multiple variables, so there is actually ways you can store data within make. So if you just wanted to store like this person's phone number or whatever, you can just store it and log it there, and then if that's multiple, then that's obviously individual. Incremental fractions, so return all values as 1 after first run, and then you can kind of like keep increasing the value. Very, very rare I use anything like that. Set multiple variables. This can just be like set the value of multiple variables and then set it for individual. Sleep, this is a really useful one. You can put like delays in. So if you're ever having issues, let's say you wanted to send all 3 of these emails, you might want to put a sleep module in between each time and then just choose a number of seconds. So you might want it to be 60 seconds. So there's a minute delay in between each one of those emails, just so that then there's not like all of these emails get sent at once. You can do up to 300. You can have like 5 of these modules in a row anyway. So if you ever wanted to like have multiple sleep modules, then you can do so. If you needed like a 5-minute delay or whatever, you can do that. It gets a bit more complicated if you want to do hours, but there's ways around that. Okay, awesome. Now we've got to composing a string. This is literally just kind of like the formatting, very similar to text phases, and then converting the encoding of a text. So this is just basically converting stuff from HTML to whatever you need on here. And then switch, I don't think I've ever used switch, but you can kind of change the output based on the input. Bit more complicated, let me just show you what I mean. So you choose your input as normal, so we use that message ID as that's one on here. You can then pick like what pattern you want, so it's the same as a text phaser, and then you can kind of like match other things externally. So if you want to know that these message IDs are the same so that you don't end up doing X, Y and Z, then you can do that. Follow for more tips and tricks you didn't know you needed. I appreciate this is probably getting more and more complicated, but realistically most of this stuff you won't use, but I would rather you know like that these bits exist. At the end of the day, normally it consists of you plugging, I want to, second I receive an email, I want ChatGPT to read it and draft it. That is literally an email module set to watch for new emails. ChatGPT, which you feed the input in from there, and then draft email, which you take the output from ChatGPT and put it into there. So it's really, really rather simple to do, and you kind of just connect all of these different modules up together. So I will show you, we'll build that one later on just so that you've got a bit of idea of how it works. So, flow controls, there isn't masses on here, so if you want it to repeat, I don't know why you would, but you can get it to just keep repeating round. These two, feeders and integrators, kind of split data into more rows and then bring them back down into small rows. So if you, let's say you're passing products from Shopify and they've got 4 different variables, but they're technically all under this one product, you probably want to split them off so that you've got like the red option, the blue option, the green option, so you can make any changes individually, and it would like just run one, then it'll run the second one, then it'll run the third one, then it'll run the fourth one. And then when you've made the changes, you can put it straight back into an array and it will bring them back down and it just kind of like condenses the data back down. It's very rare you'll need to do that, but it's kind of something if loads of data is moving through together and you're like, but I want that bit. This helps kind of like split that data down. It doesn't mean that you're using like 3 times as much usage because it's splitting it off into 3 different ways, but like sometimes you have to, it's just part of playing the game. Routers is one that I use all the time. This is where it splits it off into 2 different directions. And this is a really good place to kind of show you some filters. So if you click on the actual running bit of here, you can label your filter whatever you want. You can basically put conditions in. So if you wanted the message ID to be equal to this message ID, it can go there. And then let's say you wanted this message ID, like if it doesn't exist, then it will go this way. And then very quickly you can kind of like split things off. So let's say you need to reply to the ones that have matched on here just from one email, whereas if it doesn't have a message ID, then it can go this way, just as an example. And let me show you some of the other options on here. So there's like starts with, doesn't start with, ends with, match patterns, equal to. There's loads and loads of these, so it's a really, really good way to filter down kind of what data is being passed through. And if it doesn't go through the filter, it will just stop here and it will just kind of kill the data off. So it's good to kind of do them as early as you can, but also we want to split it in 2 different ways here. So really, really simple to build, well worth using. We use lots of filters. Let's move on to our next one. Let's see what else is on here. HTTP request. I should probably say that I'm doing some of the like most complicated stuff that like sometimes I haven't even used some of these tools. It's that rare that we kind of get to this kind of level of complexity just because you don't need to. Like most of the automations that people want building are like simple, very simple plugins. Like I built a 20-step plan of onboarding processes and documents being created from templates and all of this kind of stuff. We didn't use any of this. Like no, in fact I didn't even use a router to split them 2 different ways. I didn't even use a filter. It's that simple. Like don't overcomplicate this. I just want you to have a really good base understanding of what these do, so that then in the future if you ever need them, you're not like, oh my god, I've never seen this before in my life. So the HTTP request, we use this a lot, to be fair. This is for getting files from a URL, which is really useful, especially if you're receiving them over email, or even just it's getting created further down here as a URL. You can then just extract it here. Making basic requests. This can be like authorizing processes and stuff like that. Not really one that we use. This can also be for like feeding APIs as well. What have we got here? This is basically the same, just certified or not. Making an API key request. So some documents don't plug into this, some like modules that don't plug in. I'm trying to think of one, but chances are, if you've heard of the company, it plugs into here. Noatires.com is one that we're building at the moment that just straight up will not plug in, which is fine. Quick, hit the follow button before this blows up, because we can just use an API call, and it's literally the case of just very simply plugging in the API address and everything into ChatGPT, and it will kind of spit out an output for you. Just ask it for what you want, even copy and paste the data from the page. I will show you one just so that you've got a bit of a better understanding. Make request is the same, so you can kind of like send it off the URLs and stuff like that. Retrieval headings, like if you've got kind of a link or something that you want and it's going to go retrieve the headings, and that's fine. Let me show you what I mean by some of these API calls. stuff. So you create a code here and basically put that data into the other side of it so that it's got a two-way connection. Pop the URL of the place in that it's going to, and then it's either going to be a get request or a post request. Unless it states otherwise, it's going to be a put or a patch or a delete or whatever. Chances are it's either going to be get, where you're getting the data from them, or post, where you're sending data to them. That's normally the only two that we use. Occasionally, like put does a very similar thing, but it's normally more file based, and things like that. So yeah, just go with the basis that it's get or post unless it states otherwise, which it might do. And then you kind of just want to, we normally pick raw for that. Sometimes it changes on other and then JSON, but also this kind of depends on the output of the data that you're sending. Like if you're just sending plain text, then it's probably going to be plain text. You don't even need to add anything into here normally, and then is it going to automatically convert JSON or so on? No, if you've kind of already selected that it's JSON or whatever. Sometimes if it doesn't work, it's worth just playing with them. There is some hidden advanced options, but honestly, if it's hidden, chances are you don't need them. Especially just for kind of like very basic automations. I hope that makes sense. I possibly have confused you on that, but if you just use ChatGPT and say like, look, I'm trying to do this, it will just massively, it will do all of your legwork for you anyway. Let me see if I can find another one of their staple pre-built ones. Oh, there's a couple more. Well, this is a perfect example of like all of the stuff that already plugs into here. So like, I mean, we can talk about the make one. So you can actually like create scenarios, run scenarios just off the basis of like these automations. There's loads and loads of stuff. I'll just quickly run through them. So list scenarios, this is just kind of creating a list of them. Get a scenario, so I don't really know what you'd be doing with these other than kind of like building other scenarios or making changes to, which might be a bit of a headache to be completely honest with you. You can create scenarios, so every time something happens you create a new scenario. So let's say, well in fact this is a perfect example, you build an automation that services a industry, which we recommend you do, or at least use a client's previous work to kind of recommend to an industry. You might want to set this up so the second the client pays you, you can set Stripe up to notify you once you receive a payment, and then it create a scenario and kind of already build the scenario out. Especially if you get a scenario from Blueprint and then create, will kind of already build this scenario out for you, and then you've just got to go in and plug all of the little bits in. Quite useful. You can delete scenarios. I'm not sure why you'd want to, but turn a scenario on or off. So that would be quite a good one if you've got one that's running all the time, but you want to be able to turn it off once it stops. You could have that at the end of your scenario. So let's say it filters down and actually says like, oh, when it gets to here, there's no more data in here. At the minute, I've got ones that do that that's set up to notify my phone saying like there's no more data on here to get through. But you could technically have this afterwards and it just turn the whole entire scenario off. And you've just got to create a connection to your own account. Quite a clever way of doing it. Let me just carry on. Where did we get to? Okay, so you can invite users to your Make account. You can get team members, get roles, delete a team, get usage data, create or update a custom app. There's loads and loads of stuff on here. All of it's fairly self-explanatory. And to be honest with you, I don't really know why you'd be playing around with this unless it's internal anyway. Make API call as well. So yeah, that should give you some on there. The other one that I want to talk about is webhooks. So this is the only last complicated one, and you've got loads of choices on here. So this might be a case where you plug it into Go High Level or whatever it is. All you're doing basically on here is looking for webhooks. In fact, I think there's another version of this where it's the trigger point. Yeah, there we go. So normally you're using this as a trigger point. This is normally at a point where you'd create a connection, and all you do on here is like put in a number. You get that data from like Go High Level or whatever, and you just copy and paste it in, and then this will literally just sit and wait for data to be passed to it. Make sure you save this video to come back to later. It's that simple. which I don't know if I could show you. But basically, you just plug that in, and the second data is collected or like something happens, it sends data to here. This is when you haven't got stuff that directly plugs in to make. So I mean, Go High Level is a terrible example because it plugs into make, but yeah, we still do it with a webhook for whatever reason. But let's say, I don't know, there's some faxing software that only has an API. You would then basically put the kind of code in from the API, the end of the API, which would then feed it straight into here. Very rare you'll need one of those, but just ask ChatGPT and it'll tell you whether or not you need one as part of your automation. And chances are, if you can't find a module that plugs in, then you're probably going to end up using a webhook. Okay, so that is actually pretty much all of the complicated bits. So if you're still here and not blown your brains out with how complicated that was, then well done. I'm going to show you how to actually build an automation now. So we'll just do the simple Gmail, watch for email. I'm just going to pick a random account. So you'd go to add and then sign in with there. I'm just going to pick one of the ones that I've got on here. Like I've literally got all of our clients' ones. Oh no, maybe not. Let's pick one that's email one. It's got loads of my stuff plugged in anyway, so probably not that first. There we go. Okay, that's all connected up. So it's literally that simple. You can choose which folder you want it to watch. Normally we just go for inbox, but technically if you wanted to watch your junk email and reply to them telling them to go away, you could do. You can have all emails or unread emails. Chances are they're going to be unread if they're coming into your inbox, but it's entirely up to you what you want to do. I'm just going to do all for now so you can see what that looks like. Send as email, so if you just wanted it to come from a certain individual's email, I'm going to have it for everyone's. And then if you received by a certain email, really that doesn't matter. If you wanted to only have a certain subject, then you can do that. So let's say you wanted it to, every time you receive a notification from make.com, it would send you a WhatsApp as well as an email, so you can kind of have notifications in multiple places. You can do that, and then you would just use the subject of like, your automation's working. But yeah, and then you can have it marked as read if you want afterwards, and then you can choose a number of results. If it's going to run every 15 minutes, you probably want it more than one, just in case you get 2 emails in a 15-minute window, or 3 or 4 or 5. There is no real limit to this. Like if you were to put like 1,000, like it doesn't really matter. But we'll just leave that for now. And then you can choose where you want it to start with initially. So I'm just going to do it from now on. And then all we're going to do is plug ChatGPT in. We want a create a completion. So this is actually probably one that you use a lot, so I'll just give you a bit more detail. So message and assistant. So this assistants are like custom trained on any data that you want, so you can plug it into your own assistant. But we're just going to use the normal model on here. You can get it to transform text into structured data, analyze an image, generate an image, edit an image. So create a transcription, we use that a lot, and a translation, so we've got both on there. Generate an audio, like loads and loads of stuff that you're probably not going to use, but they're the main ones, so we'll just use that for now. You just want to go in and add your API account on here. I'll just use on the mouse for now. This is basically, it works as if like you're just connecting your credit card to it, so it knows how much to bill you for, of like how much your usage is. So we could go onto here, 4.0 system, or kind of whatever. A good rule of thumb is the closer to the top they are, the better they are, and the more expensive they are. Closer to the bottom, the worse they are and cheaper they are. But saying that, 3.5 turbo will do like 99% of the things that you need it to. 4.0 is just slightly better. There's kind of different updates, there's audio previews, there's the minis which cost a little bit less and activate faster. But yeah, loads and loads of stuff on there. You want to add your message, so there's 3 on here. It will be very rare you'll use assistant, you'll use system in the user. So system, you want to actually like give it the data that you want it to use. So let's say you're going to give it the input for the email. So we'll do that here. So we're going to want the context from the email. So you're just going to go, okay, what of here do I need? There's loads and loads of stuff inside here. So if you wanted to go like links, if you wanted to go for file name, anything like that, all of that's on there. Anything else? So we're realistically we're not going to want their attachment, so we want the text content, which is like the actual data that's in it. You could do the subject as well if you wanted, and that would basically then have ChatGPT read it. But you're probably going to want to tell it what you want it to do with this data. So if you click user, you can tell it as a user how you want to do it. So you might want to go down the line of, you are just you probably want to go into a bit more detail about what it is that your company does and stuff like that, but you can do that there. And then you want that data in front of the other one, so it knows immediately how it's acting and what it's acting on, and then we just plug the information in there. Max tokens, I always leave this as 0 because you're kind of like maximizing the number of tokens. If it's 0, it will just use the limit of the module. If it's not 0, then it will go, you can like choose a limit. So if you only wanted it to use 50 tokens, then it's probably not going to do a big output. It's probably going to be around 100 word output. Whereas if you put it to 0, it will just do as much as it feels necessary, and there's kind of no limit on it. Advanced stuff, this is temperature. This is quite important. This is how much you want it to hallucinate. So how much of the stuff on there do you want it to make up? Do you want it to go into great detail about X, Y, and Z? Do you want it to do, or do you want it to just be like, okay, I've got this information, I'm making the most educated decision on that, and then you can kind of choose that side of the scale. So if you go too narrow, so if you go 0.1, that will literally only use the little bit of data that it's got. So if you get an email from somebody being like, yeah, that sounds good, it's really going to struggle to know what to reply to that. Whereas if you like are happy with it being a bit more flexible, you might go to like 0.5, and it'll be like, it will make stuff up, but it will actually know that it can kind of reply in a bit more of a relaxed manner. If you're going to read it anyway, it probably doesn't really matter. And if you go all the way up to 2, it will just basically it has permission to just straight up lie. So normally we stick around the kind of like 0.2 or something like that. Follow me for loads more tips. This is like very similar to temperature, but it's just a way of kind of like dealing with token probability, which is a bit more complicated and you don't really need to know about, but I normally leave them as 1. Number of responses to generate, so if you wanted like 5 responses, why you would do that I'm not sure, but if you wanted 5, it would put 5 different responses in there, and then you can kind of like do whatever you want with that data. The rest of the stuff really not worthwhile doing. I mean, like, do you want it in a JSON output or text output? Probably if we're going to send an email, I'll keep it as text. And then the last bit is just going to connect it back up to the email and click send an email. The other beautiful thing is it will have already connected it to my account and keeps it within there. So if we want to reply to the same person, you're just going to go in and go, okay, who was this sent from? Sender's email address, put that in there. Subject, if you leave blank, it will just do the reply one, but if you wanted to put like my AI response, you can do that. The reason we normally use email over like Office 365 and Gmail is you can choose to have it as plain text, which is such a lifesaver, because when you put like spaces in, it will actually keep those spaces, whereas if not, you need to like encode it, which you can ask ChatGPT to do, but it's not great. So if you do it like that, you're going to want like the end paragraph, I can't remember what it is, I want to say it's something like that, for like end of paragraph and stuff, which really just like, if you know how to do, I still don't see why you wouldn't just click plain text and write an email like a normal human. You can add attachments, so you can click file names on there, and you can choose like let's say there's an attachment on this one. You want like the file name and then the data from that. It's going to be the same layout if you get ChatGPT to generate you an image and stuff like that, so you can just plug that straight in. And there we go, we have built a very simple automation from the word go. I mean, like if you wanted to add in, like, I don't know, it then sends somebody what have I got on here that might be useful? Like if you want them to make a Google Doc after sending this email, so you've got a record of it for whatever reason, you can do it from a template, you can do it from a create a document and stuff like that. But that should give you a very brief fundamental understanding of that. And now I'm going to do problem solving. So this is just going to be what happens if, like, for whatever reason it does not work. The first thing you want to do is test the things individually. So if you right click, you can then click like run this module only. You can click, well, all of these, but if you run this on its own and it works, brilliant. If you run this on its own and it works, brilliant. And you run this on its own and it doesn't work, then you know that the kind of problem's here. If, as the automation goes through anyway, it will highlight what's broken. And the first step I normally do is I normally Google it and go, why can't I get these things to connect? The second thing is the make community, which, to be honest with you, is absolutely brilliant. You can search anything for like, let's do how to set up with GitHub level, just out of curiosity, and basically go through and be like, okay, this one sounds good, and then basically read about it. And 9 times out of 10, the actual developers that work at different companies answer these questions. Give this a like if you agree with me on this one. This person who works at Make has answered this question, like, book a ticket if you've got any issues. But like 99% of the time the data's there. And to be fair, if you're putting make.com into Google, this is normally where you end up anyway. So let's have a look and see if there's anything else on here. The security info, Reddit posted image doesn't seem to work, help. So this is like exactly what people will be posting, and then you just come on and there'll be some really useful person that says like, oh, you just need to do it as a share link and then upload it. And you're just like, wow, that's so simple, why didn't I think of that? Yeah, so really useful on there. That's normally where I start. Then if you go to make.com, there's a contact us section. Normally they take about 3 days to get back to you, which Make, if you ever watch this, please sort out. I just want an instant reply because my problems will be solved way quicker, and you probably won't have to reply to any of my support things if you're able to answer me in 2 minutes. Otherwise, 4 hours later, I've figured a way around it anyway, and you help me 4 days later and I've already solved this automation. But anyway, rant over. You can click get help on here, really useful. Just send a loom saying like this is a problem and the link to your thing, and they can literally just pop in and see it and be like, ah, here's where you're going wrong. But yeah, anyway, they've also got like help centers for like the developer APIs and like stuff like that. So loads of stuff on there. But the real trick, in fact there's one more, but we'll start with this, is if you cannot, for whatever reason, get something to work, go onto the template gallery and go on and just find whichever one is closest to you. So let's say you're struggling to sync Facebook leads from ads to a Google Sheet. You can click on this and click get this template, and it will literally just download this template already done for you, and you will then be able to follow through the steps when it's ready to load. Follow through all of the steps. It gives you a complete guide, and you can go through and be like, oh, that makes sense, that's why I'm going wrong. So obviously we need to create a webhook, which I haven't got for Google Ads now. But you can just go through the follow-up steps and you'll find out like, oh, I need to lay it out like this, oh, that makes perfect sense, and then it will work. And then like you can just copy over whatever's wrong, because it might be a case that like on ChatGPT you needed this box down here, something has to be in C, it doesn't really matter what it is, when you go and do the template, there's going to be something already in seed, and you can be like, okay, let me try that in here and see if it makes a difference. But yeah, that makes a massive difference and has saved loads and loads of time for me. The other thing that's worth noting is ChatGPT. So obviously just ask you whatever questions you need, but there is also a make.com GPT. So this has everything you could possibly need to know about make.com in one place on here, and it's literally just like everything's logged on here. So if you want to be like, I need to connect a API for a level, start doing this, you can literally just ask it, and if it doesn't know the answer to this, it means it's nowhere in the whole entire Make's database or ChatGPT's database. So it's literally running you through how to make like we already talked about HTTP modules, and then doing a make request, and then you can do it based on which one. It's a get, post, or put. We talked about most of the time it's get and post. So all of this stuff's on here, and then just test it, blah 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 blah. Really useful. It will save you loads of time just chatting with this masterful GPT. But yeah, well worth kind of asking any questions. It also can do a lot of the legwork for you anyway. So yeah, really happy with that. Is there anything else worth noting? I don't think so. I mean, if you're having any big problems, just pop them in the group and we can help you out. But yeah, that should give you a really brief overview of what exactly Make does and how it works. One of the only other things that I'd like to talk about is their AI assistant. So you can literally get it to help describe a scenario. If you've got a plain one, you can get it to actually draft out a scenario, to get it to build it, and like already build out an automation for you, so you can it will do all of the legwork of plugging these things in. But just think about it really logically of like, okay, I need an email module because otherwise I'm not going to be able to collect all the emails from. Okay, plug that in, and just do it step by step. What has to happen, and you can always add stuff in the middle. So if you're like, well, actually, I want to download something from Google Drive. You just click in here and just click on Google Drive and be like, download a file, and then you can literally feed that straight into ChatGPT. Yeah, dead easy. I hope that's helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe.